Picture this. It's early 2026, and the world's most critical waterway just got shut down. But this wasn't a story of massive naval fleets or fields of deadly sea mines. This is the story of how the Strait of Hormuz was closed not by warships, but by an idea. It's a fascinating story, so let's break down exactly how it happened. Right, so that's the big puzzle here, isn't it? How do you manage to bring a fifth of the entire world's oil supply to a dead stop using something other than pure brute force? Well, the answer reveals a totally new kind of warfare, one that literally weaponizes the global financial system itself. And this is where things get really interesting. You know, when you think blockade, you're probably picturing a wall of steel on the water, right? Dozens of warships, maybe some mines. But the 2026 crisis, it was completely different. Instead of this massive military operation, it was pulled off with just a few very precise actions designed to create not a physical barrier, but a barrier made of pure market fear. And this gets us to the absolute core concept of this whole thing, the insurance blockade. And this is the secret sauce, really. You don't actually need to sink every ship. No, you just have to make the risk of sailing through so high that insurance companies basically say, no way, we're not covering that. No insurance means no shipping. It's a brutally simple economic equation. The waterway is physically open, but from a business perspective, it's sealed shut. Okay, so how did this whole thing kick off? Well, like a lot of global crises, it all started with a single spark. In late February 2026, a U.S. Israeli military operation sparked a really fast, really unconventional response from Iran, and that's what set this whole chain of events into motion. Man, those first few days were just a chaotic blur of escalation. On February 28th, the conflict kicks off, and within hours, Iran's first move isn't to send out its navy. Nope, they just started blasting warnings over the radio. A day later, a single drone strike makes that threat very, very real. By March 4th, the U.S. Navy has achieved total military dominance, sinks 17 Iranian ships. But then, look what happens the very next day. The global insurance market just pulls the plug. And just like that, game over. All right, let's dig into how they actually pulled this off, because this was not random chaos. This was a carefully calculated four-phase strategy, and it was all designed to manipulate market psychology. And here's the playbook they used. It's actually, well, brilliantly simple. First, you sow a little uncertainty with those radio warnings. Step 2, you prove you're serious with a couple of targeted, very public attacks. Then comes the genius part. Step 3, you just wait. You let the naturally cautious, super connected global insurance market do all the heavy lifting for you. Once they start canceling policies, the blockade is a reality. Step 4 is basically a victory lap, just formally announcing the control you already have. And this quote just nails it, doesn't it? As Marine war insurance specialist Monroe Anderson put it, it was a de facto close based on the perception of a threat. Think about that. Iran literally outsourced its blockade to the insurance markets in London. They didn't have to stop the ships themselves. They just had to make it unprofitable and uninsurable to send them. So on one hand, you have this picture of a classic military victory. The U.S. Navy did its job, and they did it perfectly. They established complete control of the seas. They neutralized the other side's fleet. By every textbook definition, the waterway was totally secure. But then you see this number, around 3,200. And that was the real story. So you have warships patrolling a supposedly open strait, but thousands of commercial ships are just stuck, totally unable to move. They were basically floating hostages, not of a navy, but of the insurance market. It shows the steep paradox. Military supremacy did not equal economic control. So you can imagine, this new kind of blockade didn't just stay in the Gulf. It sent this massive shockwave rippling through the entire global economy, almost instantly. Okay, the first and most obvious hit, energy. Oil prices shot up over 13%. But look at European natural gas. It more than doubled. We're talking in just 4 days. This wasn't some slow-moving trend. This was pure overnight panic as the market suddenly woke up to the fact that a huge chunk of the world's energy was just gone. Now get this, the price to rent a giant oil tanker to go from the Middle East to China, it almost doubled in a single day. That's not just a price tweak, folks. That is a full-blown 5-alarm fire raging through the global supply chain. It's just pure panic. And of course, a shock that big in energy doesn't stay contained. It immediately spilled over into the wider financial markets. You can see it right here, just a sea of red.
The Nikkei in Japan took a huge hit, down over 5%, and you see markets in Europe and the US falling right along with it. Everybody was terrified of a new wave of inflation and a potential global recession. The fear was palpable.
But here's the thing. The economic pain wasn't spread out evenly at all. When you look at this chart, you can really see just how vulnerable certain countries were. I mean, for a country like Pakistan, this wasn't just some headline in the financial news. This was a full-on national energy emergency. This blockade effectively held the economies of South and East Asia hostage. So what's the big takeaway here? The Hormuz crisis of 2026, it wasn't just another flare-up in a troubled region. No, it was a template, a whole new playbook for how to fight a war in the 21st century. And this really gets to the power of the insurance blockade. It costs next to nothing to execute, but it inflicts billions and billions in economic damage. It operates in this murky legal gray area, which makes it super hard for the world to figure out how to even respond. And maybe most importantly, it turns the very engine of global capitalism, the insurance market, into a weapon against itself. It is the ultimate asymmetric strategy. And that, of course, leaves us with a really big, really unsettling question. We saw that a powerful navy can clear the waters of warships, for sure, but it can't clear the fear from the markets. So if the real battlefield is now financial, and the weapon of choice is just pure market fear, how in the world do you defend against that?